All right, for lesson 5, we're going to go over grading and roofing. Specifically in this video, we're going to talk about grading, which can be pretty tricky with some of the tools that are given to us, initially with SketchUp. So I'm going to show you some plugins that are going to be really helpful to help with some of that. But let's get into that sandbox tool. This is the first thing we want to talk about. Sandbox tools. It's a native tool for SketchUp. You can find that if you right-click on your toolbar and go to Sandbox. I think we already had it on, so yeah, so we're just going to turn it back on. Sandbox, so here is what that looks like again. Remember, we used that drape tool in a previous video. But here's what we would do for something like this. So this is just contour lines that we drew out in SketchUp. You can get them in from AutoCAD, but what you do need to make sure of is that, they're all set to different elevation points. So each one of these contour lines is set to be 5 foot higher than the next one. And the depth of these lines, it's just random right now. So this would be, example of what you would do for, putting grades in for a contour line type of landscape drawing. So all you need to do is just select all of these and then click on that from contours, and then it automatically creates a face right over the top of that. So all those points are hit, along that line, and you can kind of see how it makes the grade change a little bit. So it's pretty cool. It's actually pretty helpful when you do have contour lines. So I do recommend using that as much as you can. The other button that they offer is called From Scratch. And I might not have mentioned this. So yeah, you can actually find that sandbox tool and button. It's under the tools here. Well, they got one for some of the tools you can use within Smooth or From Scratch or from Contours. But also under Draw, you have Sandbox here from Contours and From Scratch, I should mention. But because we have it on the toolbar, here is where that is. So what I'm going to do is just do one from scratch, and that's right here. Click that button. It says our grid spacing is set to 2 foot. That's about appropriate, I'd say. If you left click once and bring this over and then just bring it out a little ways, you've got all of these little grid, boxes within your group that you've created here in your face. You can change that. I wouldn't go much lower than a foot. If you go too small, what happens is it can really freeze up your SketchUp program. Even for fast computers, it just takes a lot of, thinking on its end to try to get through that. So I've had my computer crash plenty of times doing this, so definitely be careful when you're doing anything with grades. I'd save beforehand. So to manipulate this flat, group here, what we need to do is get into our smooth button right here. So what I'm going to do is left click, and I'm going to actually get into our group. I don't want to go all the way. I just want to grab, there. So I want to have everything here, but it's selected. We're within the group, but I'm going to go ahead and hit the smooth button here. And that brings out this red circle, and that the radius right now is set to 8 foot, but maybe we want to change this to 5 feet. So I'm going to hit 5, apostrophe, hit enter. There we go. And that kind of brings it down a little smaller. And then we can just start kind of hitting these buttons, or hitting the left mouse button and then dragging our mouse up and down. And then that can kind of start giving us some grades here, as you can see. So it works pretty well. There are some plugins out there that we're going to talk about next that I think work a little bit better. Because this is really all you can kind of do with it right here at this point. So anyway, that is From Scratch. And that's how you do that. That's a native tool. The next thing we're going to talk about, which I use all the time, is called Soap Skin Bubble. You can find that at the Extension Warehouse. Just go to the search bar, type in soap, should pop up for you, Soap Skin Bubble. Click that, and then just go ahead and install it. I'm going to bring it out onto my toolbar. Soap Bubble, oh, I guess I had it. And I should have known that. Let's see here. There we go. Soap Bubble. Okay, so that's right here. And what we want to do with this example, this is a grocery store. there is a sidewalk that we want to take from this point at the sidewalk and bring it all the way down to the street level. So what you do to start that is what we need to do is draw a line. I'm going to go ahead and grab my line tool here and bring the line all the way down to the edge. Bring our line all the way down to the edge here. And as you can see, a face has not been created yet because we have this curve here. It's curved here. It's not on the same plane. So no faces have been created. So what we need to do is create a face with soap skin. And we need to select all of these lines on the perimeter of what we want to face. So we can do that, and everything's selected, and we're just going to hit that soap skin bubble here. And it says you must select 3 or more edges in a closed loop. So this is where that path select tool comes in handy. So let's go back to that path select tool. This is great because what we did is we missed something. So probably one of these small lines, but if you go ahead and left click on your first line and then just start dragging this around until you're back home again where you started. Left click just to kind of keep it going. Bring this all the way around, bring it all the way around. Left click again. So now we know that everything has been selected. Sometimes what I do, I'll actually even move this. I hit the move tool here, move copy, right click or hit control and then move this out. So you've got a copy of it out here. And then I'll go ahead and then, hit that soap skin bubble outside here just to make sure that everything's closed off. You can see it a little bit easier because if it wasn't, maybe there's like a little point that's like broken and then you need to fix that. So anyway, after you hit that soap skin bubble here, go ahead and hit return or enter, and that's gonna finish that right here. If it's bigger, you get a lot more grade going on. That'll take a little bit longer, but it's usually fairly quick. And then just go ahead and select outside of that box to close that off. And then what we want to do is change this first. We want to go ahead and left click, and we're going to do the reverse faces. So we have the front facing outward, and that's going to be important for a sculpting brush that we're going to use here shortly to manipulate this. But also we want to hide all of this geometry. So you're going to right click again, hit soften smooth edges, and then just click on that soften coplanar. It opens up the default tray, the soften edges, and then just kind of look at it again. You may have more lines, so what you need to do is increase the degrees here. So increase that up, make sure this is checked off, and then get out of that right there. So now we've got a nice, clean, smooth, flat surface, or not flat, it's actually a sloped surface. And then we're gonna just move that right back into our model again. So I'll use the move tool. It'll leave the perimeter lines where they were. I'll probably just go back and delete those later, and then just hit that endpoint where you want it. And now you've got your perfectly sloped, walkway, which is great. And then you can, paint through that as well. If you're going to use a paintbrush, just make sure you're selecting inside the group, and then applying your paint to the surface of what you're going to be, what you've just graded and sloped with soap skin bubble. So anyway, that's a great tool. I love it. It's probably my favorite tool within SketchUp. It's like changed the way I work on a lot of things with grades. It's great. This is a new one that I just came across, which is great. It's through Fredo, but it's called Fredo Scale Radial Bending. And you can find that in the extension store. So let's double check that. Fredo Scale. Yep, that's what you want to grab right here. So Fredo Scale. I'm going to right click and turn mine on. And this is the button we're going to use. It's called Radial Bending. So what I have here is a plan where most of this property is flat, but the front yard actually slopes towards the street here. And this is kind of like a tricky one because you've got the driveway as well that needs to slope. You got a planting bed that needs to slope. Sometimes you'd even have a front walk that needs to slope, and everything needs to slope. The grass needs to slope next to the walkway, or the driveway, and the planting. It all needs to slope together. And soap skin bubble, it can be okay for doing this, but I found an easier way, I think. So if you want to go ahead and get to the point where you're ready to, make that slope. I know from this planting bed right here is everything past this point is where it starts sloping. So I'm going to draw a line straight across to define, the point that I want to start sloping. And I'm actually going to delete this because this is a property boundary line, just to make it less confusing. And what I do need to do is determine how far down I want to slope this. And so what I'll do is grab my selection tool, move copy, bring this down. I'll make a copy of that, bring this down about 5 feet or so. And then I'm going to go ahead and select everything that I want to slope. So I'm going to grab my selection tool, drag that, should grab that one, should grab that one. I'm going to deselect this front line, and then I'm going to grab this radial bending button, and I need to change the direction that protractor's in, so I'm going to change it to the right. I use the right arrow for that. And I'm going to click it once, click the end point, and then click it one more time, and then you can start bending it. As you can kind of see the lines already down below, this is kind of like where it's gonna go. Now, the one thing I can't do with this so far, and maybe there's something that I'll learn a little bit later and share with you, but sorry, I kind of got knocked out of that area. You can't snap to that line, unfortunately. So all I can do is just kind of get it close. So if I try to snap to it, it'll only go half the distance. So maybe I actually even need just to say, bring it down 10 feet to bring it to 5. But for the purposes of what we're doing, all I'm going to do is just kind of eye it. And I know we need to get it to about that point right here. And that's just fine. I mean, we're talking inches here of being perfectly accurate. So I'll click out of that, get out of here, erase that initial line. And the reason why it's kind of gray right now is because we're underneath the SketchUp flooring. So I'm going to go ahead and move this up as well, just so we don't see that grayness. And I think that's really all we need to do. So now we've got faces created, which is great. We can actually, fill all this in. We got grass, we've got, concrete, we've got landscaping bed, through here. And everything's kind of bending how we really want it to. Now, to create that street again, we just basically need to, do a group outside here. So we can just do, let's say our rectangle tool, I think might even work. Bring this out, to a certain point. That kind of made some weird geometry going on in there, which I don't really want. So what we'll do is just take a line tool. Bring this out here. Bring this out here. Probably select all 3 of these. Move copy. Oops, I'll try that again. Grab all of that. Move copy. Yeah, that's a little bit better. Oops, actually want this line. What I did was actually created construction guidelines, which I didn't really want to do that, but here's what we're trying to do. So now we're going to make a group out of this. Delete these lines. And then we'll just bring that group back into here. That way we don't affect any of the geometry of this model, and then we can just go ahead and color that in. So now, the street's flat. We've got the driveway sloping down the way we want it. And trust me, this is so much easier than trying to figure out how to get this point to curve perfectly down to, this point over here. It really is frustrating. So highly recommend that tool. That is the Fredo Scale Radial Bending. And then I do want to go over the Artisan tool set. And this is great for sculpting, those grid areas that you want to go ahead and, move around. So what we'll do is jump into this one. This is a group. It's a grid. It was just made from our sandbox tool from scratch. And we'll double click into here. And we're going to open up our Artisan tool brush or tool palette, which is right here. And you can find that under I believe that is in the extension store. Let's double check that. So Artisan. Yep, there it is. So go ahead and download that one. And we've got a sculpt brush right here. And we just go ahead and click on that. And we can actually start moving, you know, some of this. And if you right click, you can smooth that out a little bit more. You can pinch it, flatten it, inflate it. It's great. If you want to change how much it kind of soaps up, you can hit the down arrow. So it just kind of slowly sculpts. Or if you want to do a big one, you can go up further. You can make that radius a little smaller. You can kind of see it right here. It's in gray by hitting the left button. And that's pretty great. And what you'll see here, though, let me show you. We're still in sculpt. I'm going to bring this down. You can see now, like the edge goes up all the way over here. And maybe we don't want that to happen on like an edge like this where it's meeting something, but we still want to kind of grade this a little bit. So there is a way to fix that. So what we need to do is click out of here, double click into here. We're going to soften and smooth edges first of all. So make sure that's all softened. And then we're going to go ahead and make sure that this is reverse face so that we're showing white, which it is. We're going to double click into here, and then we're going to deselect the faces. So all we're really selecting is just the edges. Go to Tools, go to Artisan, and then go to Crease Selection. And then what we want to do is crease edges and vertices. And if you mess that up for whatever reason, you can go back and uncrease that. But here's the crease. Just go ahead and hit OK. It says 122 edges creased, 122 vertices creased. So now if we click into this again, we can go back to our Artisan sculpt brush and then just start creating, you know, more of that grade that we want to achieve without affecting that edge over here. So you right click, you hit smooth this out. You know, we just kind of make things look a little bit nicer. And that's pretty much how you do that. The biggest thing to remember with something like this is that you have to, you know, either soften the area in here so you get rid of all those little grid spacings if you want to lock this into place, or if you still have those grids in the model, which maybe I can undo too, you have to select only the edges here. So what you would probably do is just go ahead and select in here, jump into here, click that, hit shift, well, grab your first edge, it's kind of tricky, and then hit shift, grab it all the way over here, hold the shift button down. So now you're kind of getting more into what you probably don't want to mess with. So you have to be careful with it, but basically you're just selecting the perimeter only. Then you go to the Artisan button and make sure you do crease selection and then crease edges and vertices. And I've had trouble with that in the past, so definitely make sure that that is selected properly, but it's just doing the perimeter, making sure everything is kind of locked into place. And then as far as grading, that's it. I don't know if there's anything else that we need to talk about, but that's what I pretty much use. Soap Skin Bubble, I use, like I said, quite a bit. That's awesome. This new one here, Fredo Scale Radial Bending, is great. And I'll probably start using that a little bit more because that was really easy to be able to slope things like walkways, driveways, planting beds with the grass as well, all at the same time. So that's awesome. Yeah, so that should be it. And then the next video will cover roofs.